Welcome to Infertility and Me Podcast, a show that amplifies diverse stories about the struggles of infertility and fertility in a safe space. Our goal is to normalize fertility stories that validate, give hope, and create a community where no one is left silently suffering. Welcome back to another episode of Infertility and Me Podcast. I'm your host, Monique Farouk. Thank you for letting me be a part of your day. Thank you for listening, for all of your downloads, shares, for following on Instagram, for following on your preferred audio platform, and subscribing to the YouTube channel. None of this is possible without you guys' support of the podcast and helping our friends tell their stories their own way. And if you would ever like to tell your story on the podcast, please reach out to me at info@moniquefarouk.com. Today, you guys, we have a guest named Akitra Johnson-Olatuyi. She and her husband have been trying to conceive for a few years now. She's still in the thick of things, like many of you, if not all of you listening and or watching today. And she is of advanced maternal age, over the age of 35, and actually she's over the age of 40, and she's still trying to conceive. She's on the path now to possibly surrogacy. And today in this episode, she shares with us her struggles to momhood and her losses and miscarriages through ectopic pregnancy, as well as chemical pregnancies, as well as a stillbirth. So trigger warning if you've ever experienced any of those things, traumatic situations, that we do speak about that today in this episode. And Akitra also describes her desire for motherhood as a deep knowing that her baby is still waiting for her. And through this episode, she hopes to not only encourage herself, but to encourage and uplift you through her story and determination and faith. And so we will be back in just a second, you guys, with Akitra. All right, you guys, we are back with our girl Akitra Olatuyi. Thank you, my dear, for coming onto the show and being so brave to do it while you're still in the midst of trying, you and your husband. I appreciate you for getting up so early this morning and speaking to us.
Thank you.
So, how did you and hubby meet? How did that all transpire?
I'm laughing because, well, it's kind of not such a sparkly story, but I guess it is. So, we actually met through a mutual friend, right? I was pretty adamant that I wasn't interested in dating anyone at the time. But the friend was like, "You need to meet someone. You need to meet someone." I was like, "No, I don't. I definitely don't." And so she made the introduction. And when I saw him, I was like, he's handsome, okay. But I wasn't really trying to fall for anyone. And so I always joke with him and I call him my unexpected love because I wasn't expecting him and I wasn't expecting to fall in love. But we just kind of did. And as much as I tried to back off, he was quite persistent. So I guess he knew I was what he wanted.
Yes, I love a man that's sure of himself.
But I kind of felt like maybe he needed me more than I needed him. But in return, I find that I definitely needed him as well. So it was kind of more of a spiritual connection. But of course, the attraction was definitely there. That's what kind of kept me answering the phone and stuff. But
I love it. I love it. No, it's beautiful. No, you said it's not sparkly, but it is, because you came from a spiritual place, and that's always a beautiful thing. So I love it. I love it, and I'm so glad things worked out for you guys. A lot of people don't get the opportunity to meet someone with that much of a connection, and so that's a blessing in my book. So you did good, girl. Hubby did too.
thank you.
Yes, no problem. So did you always want to be a mom, Akitra? Did you always have that motherly tingling senses?
Honestly, I think that I've always had the instinct, right, to be a mom. I'm the oldest of five, and I'm also the oldest grandchild. So, growing up when you're the oldest, and I was the only girl for 16 years. So I probably like any older sibling. know, I don't know if I'm going to have kids because, you have to babysit and, tend to the younger ones. But I think that I have, kind of always wanted to be a mom. I remember saying when I was growing up that I would like four children, two, of my own, and then two I would adopt. And it's just ironic that I've actually conceived four times, but I don't have any living children. So that number four has been there since I was very, very young. Um, but I think, yeah, I've always, wanted to love on and mother someone, and I think I had a really great example in my mom and my grandma and my aunt.
So you told me offline that you've had some pregnancies, but you've lost chemical pregnancies and such like that. So tell us how what do you know the cause of it? Were you ever given any reason for the losses?
Mhm. Well, let me start off by telling you the losses, and maybe that'll kind of help you to understand. So the first pregnancy was an ectopic. Second, stillbirth at 6.5 months pregnant. Third, miscarriage. I started having chemical pregnancies or experiences with chemical pregnancies until about 2018. The last pregnancy was last year, 2021. I got pregnant in September and I miscarried in November. But to answer your question, have they given me, or has physicians given me reasoning for the losses? Well, the ectopic, I mean, that's pretty much a given. I had never heard of it before. That was my first pregnancy, and it scared the living hell out of me. The second pregnancy, uh, that one really took me there to deliver a stillborn. I found out when I was about 5 months pregnant that I was having some issues with my cervix. But this came from me constantly telling my doctor, that I was feeling something and had like some pains. And the way I described it, you would think that they would have done something ahead of time to really kind of see exactly what I was talking about. Because mind you, I had never gone that long. The ectopic, they found out about that relatively quickly, like within the second month or something like that. I may have been about 8 weeks at the most. So I didn't really know a whole lot about being pregnant and what that felt like. But I knew that if I was feeling something like a tightness or something in my, my abdominal area, my uterus, and it kept persisting, initially they thought I was having preterm labor. But they found out that, my cervix was opening too soon. And so I was placed on bed rest for some weeks. And then after that didn't work, I was hospitalized. And I'm from Louisiana. And so at this time, I was living in Louisiana. I now reside in Georgia. And so this was around Mardi Gras season. Anybody know anything about Mardi Gras? That's the biggest holiday of the year for us there. And my doctor at the time, this was really, really popular and involved in the Mardi Gras cruise. And so he decided to put me in the hospital under the care of some of his associates. And um, things did not go well. And I delivered at 6.5 months while he was at a Mardi Gras parade on a float.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Mm.
Yeah.
So sorry for your loss and your losses, I should
Yeah.
say.
Mhm.
Wow. Were you having a boy?
I did.
Hmm.
Yeah. We had a
I
boy because
felt masculine energy when you were talking. That's why I asked. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh man, this Black maternal health disparity is real.
It is.
It's so real. And the we should not still be having these issues. We
Very.
should not. We should not. It's too much technology out here
Mhm.
for us to still have these types of issues and to not be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. After you and hubby get married and such, and so how long was it after you got married that you guys began to discuss trying um, together?
Almost immediately. Almost immediately. Like I said, I knew that I wanted to be a mom, and I didn't want to wait. So I was, the sooner the better. Why wait? We're married. Was my thought.
And so you told me also offline that you suffered from fibroids. Had you had them removed at this point?
Oh yeah, the fibroids were removed quite some time ago. I actually had a huge fibroid. It was really big. And the one, well, of course it needed to be removed, but the first miscarriage I had, they wanted to say it was because of the fibroid was so large that the fetus couldn't grow. So it was kind of pressing on the fetus. So it was really big, and I had to have a myomectomy to have it removed. So yeah, there's no more fibroids there, and I have a little blockage in one of my tubes, but it hasn't stopped me from getting pregnant. I believe that blockage probably came from the ectopic when they had the laparoscopic procedure, but I've had
Yeah,
3 pregnancies since then, so it hasn't prevented me from getting pregnant 3 other times. Now, is it a hindrance? Has it been a hindrance in me conceiving in between those times? I think so, because then the sperm has to try to navigate its way to the right
exactly.
tube.
Hmm.
So that's a possibility, but then maybe not.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense from that perspective. Have you
Mhm.
had your eggs tested or done any kind of PGTA testing or anything to that? Well, you haven't been through IVF yet, right?
No,
Okay, okay. So have you had your egg reservation looked at by your specialist?
I haven't. Nobody's recommended it, but and that's very unfortunate for me because that's something that could have been done a long time ago. But um, that is the next step, is to have some genetic testing done and to take a look at my egg reserve and just to kind of see what things are looking like there. I've been to a couple of fertility consultations, where they've taken a look at my uterus and some other things, and according to them, everything looks good. Even with everything I did last summer prior to getting pregnant, with the different procedures and different tests, outside of having a little blockage in that tube, everything else is fine. So
Yeah.
we do need to take a look and see what my eggs are looking like, what the reserves are looking like, and get some genetic testing done on myself and my husband, just to ensure that there's not something there that we both have present that is preventing the pregnancies.
And I ask because when we get
Mhm.
over 35, our egg quality
Yes.
diminishes and our reserve drops day near
Yes.
by half, and all that. So, and
Hmm.
so I feel you on that. Trying to get
Yeah.
that test done, okay? And making sure and hoping that there's nothing else happening in there too at the same time. Like last year, this time I had my ovaries checked and I had cysts and I had never had cysts before. It's like, what the heck is going
Um,
on? It's like, it's always something, but
yeah.
that's neither here nor there. That's life. Since you have been healing since your
Mhm.
last miscarriage back in November of 2021, what's getting you through right now? What's helping you hold on to faith, I should say?
Mm. That's a good question. That seems to be a very common question for people to ask me lately, because I've been trying to share so much in the process of healing. But, initially I would say my answer or my response would be the drive just to continue on this journey of motherhood. Or my response would be I refuse to allow like my losses to get me down. It's almost like a challenge to see who's going to win. However, most recently, just making the decision to look more into other options, um, and to go a little bit more in depthly into what is actually present, like the genetic testing and taking a look at my ovaries and my egg quality. My sister, who's much younger than I am, she's in her 20s. She has had some trouble. We've had some of the same issues. However, she's been successful, her and her husband, and they have a son. Um, and she can't carry anymore because of a medical condition that she um, occurred during her pregnancy with her son. However, she said to me that if she could carry, she would, but it'd be life threatening for her. And the only thing that she could do is give me her eggs. So every week she's calling me like, when are you coming to get these eggs? Because she's very fertile. And, when I was about her age, I was extremely fertile as well. And she's like, I just want you to come and get them because I'm not going to use them. And so we make light of it. We make a joke about it. I think that is a great inspiration for me, and a great motivation too, even though it's costly. But I know that that option is there, and that would still give me a biological connection to my child. But I just have to keep trying because I kind of feel like my kids are there waiting for me, right? It's almost like a parent if you drop your children off at school. So you know where they are, but something happens along the way and you can't get to them. And they're just standing outside of the school waiting on you to pick them up. And it's taking you forever to get there. And you really want to go and get your kids. You don't want them to be standing outside in the cold or in the heat, and they may be hungry, they may be unattended. You know they're there and they know that you're out there, but you just can't get to one another. And so what drives me is to try to find ways to get to them, if that makes sense. And so that's pretty much, been my journey. And right now with my age, as a factor, even though I don't have to live in my age, right? But it is a factor that I have to consider to be realistic. I have more of a push and a drive than I've ever had before because I don't have the time that I had when I was in my 30s. I need to do it now. Then also, I need to keep the momentum going. So I want to have some energy and things like that when I have my kids when they're young, and I want to be able to say, well, hopefully, I'll be here when they're in their 30s and early 40s, to see them experience some other things in life. So the time for me is now, and that's what motivates me and keeps me going.
Mm, 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 mm. That's deep, girl. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. But I think a lot of us, I think there will be many friends who will resonate with you and understand that feeling, especially since we are waiting a little bit longer for
Mhm.
marriage and for children and living our best life, so to speak, for a little bit before we choose to settle down. And I think that's a very real concern, especially when you just spoke about wanting to live long enough to see your kids into their 30s and 40s. Like,
Mhm.
that's mind blowing to me, and it's often something I think about too. Now, I wasn't as old as you are today when I had my son, but when you have kids in your 30s, you think about that sort of a thing.
Yeah.
People are dropping like flies out here in their
Yeah.
50s and 40s and even 60s, and so I think that's a very real concern, and I think it's beautiful when you express that your kids are looking for you and you're looking for them. So what you are seeking is also seeking you. And
Mhm.
I think that's a driving force for many of us. And I know I can resonate with that as well. Like I always had this feeling like he or she was still out there. Like
Yeah.
it didn't feel complete yet. Like,
Right.
you when you're going through something and you have to stop and say, okay, this thing is dead. You know what I mean? And I get that. I get that feeling of knowing that not quite yet. Maybe just a little bit longer we'll go. And then also finding a way to deal with that too, because then how do we know
Mhm.
that we aren't pushing something that's not potentially going to work for us?
Mhm.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
It does. Yeah.
yeah, and
And,
we,
and
yeah, go ahead.
that's the thing about it. And I think it can happen to someone at any age, not just at my age. Like when something may or may not work for you, right? So let's say my body it just may not work for me. But for me, conceiving successfully, right? Like, conception can happen, but if you keep having miscarriages or if something happens and you can't deliver successfully with a healthy baby, then perhaps you may need to look into another alternative. Could be, donor eggs, like from my sister. Maybe it's something with my eggs, or perhaps surrogacy, which is really strongly considering surrogacy and using my sister's eggs. Even though I want to see what my egg quality is like, I just have a better probability with someone that has this exact same DNA as I have. For the most part, we have the same parents. Um, we look a lot alike as well. I always think she's a little prettier than I am, but we look
Mhm.
alike.
Yeah.
And, that would definitely give me a biological connection. And it would give me an opportunity to parent with my husband, which is the most important thing for me. So those are my options. I can continue to try it myself and say, well, I'm going to try IVF and, spend tens of thousands of dollars trying that and it may or may not work. Or I can say, you know what? Let me use my sister's eggs, right? Let me get mine checked out too. Because, if mine, I don't know, there may be a little miracle there. Um, but let's have some options of mine, a donor, or perhaps my sister, which is still considered a donor. And let's go the surrogate route. Let's choose a younger body, just being honest. A body that may not have, a body that hasn't been through the maternal trauma that mine has. Um, and also a body that's not, that the level of fear is different.
Mhm. Mhm.
So for the gestational carrier, they may just be a little nervous about being pregnant because maybe they haven't been pregnant before, or maybe they're nervous because this is their, this is another child that they're conceiving, whether it's theirs, or maybe this is the second time being a gestational carrier, so they really want it to happen. That's a different type of fear. That's more like a little anxiety of, hopefully we get pregnant. It's a different type of fear than what I have of, can my body do this? Will it let me down again? And so I think that those, that's a better atmosphere right now for a child. Perhaps, to be honest with you, is probably in another body, my child, than mine.
Mhm. What point did you realize that for yourself? Is it something that you were always open to, or was it something that you had to grow to be accepted of?
No, I had not been open to it before, just to be honest. Um, Last year, when I didn't know I was pregnant last year, I started looking into surrogacy because a physician recommended it to me. Um, and he gave me that recommendation because he and his partner had been trying for a number of years, and they had a friend of theirs who decided to carry for them, which saved them a lot of money. And so um, I started to look into it around the summer of last year. And actually, I remember the last email that I received from a surrogacy agency was in September 17th of 2021. And I remember that date because I was going through my emails and I was like, girl, you were pregnant at that time and still you didn't know it right then, but you were pregnant looking into surrogates. And so after the miscarriage, the new year came in and a different set of challenges came about. I lost my grandfather, just a bunch of deaths in the family, and I said, um, it's time I get serious about some things, and I really want to be a mom. I've had too many people that I love to leave here and not see me achieve certain things, and they've all known prior to, them going passing on that was something that I really, really wanted because they all experienced most of my losses and the trauma behind it. And it pressed on me even more that I just didn't, I also don't have a legacy in that sense to leave behind. you know. I have nieces and nephews, but I don't have my own child that I can say, in my old age, right? When you may need somebody to take care of you, let me call my son, let me call my daughter, you know. Um, I don't have that. And so in losing my grandfather, he and my grandmother, of course, had children, it just started to resonate with me that really, by any means necessary, I am going to go after this full speed. And as unconventional as I may have to be, it doesn't matter because everybody does what makes them happy at the end of the day. And that's the realization that I had this year. People care, but then people don't care. Even those that are closest to you, they care, but they don't care.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
hmm
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I knew, if I didn't, then I would be empty. But one thing that's really important about this process is, and it may sound funny, but I really want you to hear me and understand me when I say this, because sometimes people misunderstand me. This journey that I'm on, this particular journey right now that I'm on, I have no children. This first child, and I'm married, this is for me. This is for me. I love my husband dearly. I know that he loves me. But if our marriage was to separate today or tomorrow, he's a man. He can go on and he can have a family with someone else. I would still be left with my same challenges. This has to happen for me. Of course, it would be his child as well, but this child, this first one, because I would like to have more than one, at least two. This first one, this is special for me because this is what I personally need. I will share with my husband this child, but this child that is in waiting, this particular journey is for me. And that's one of the reasons when we were talking, when I emailed you, I don't mention a whole lot about who he is and what he does and all of those things because this particular journey really is about Akitra. And I have to be a little bit selfish about it. And I know that everybody's not going to understand that. It may not resonate with everyone. It may not sit well with everyone. And that's okay because this is not about pleasing everybody. But this is something that I must do for me. This is a have to. This is a longing that I've had for way too long. I have struggled. I have suffered primarily in silence for way too long. And I have muted my voice. I have been avoided. I have lived in shame because of what my body couldn't do, shame after every baby that's been lost. And I'm tired of that now. And I can't do that anymore to myself because I see me losing my smile sometimes. I see me losing my joy. And that's not me. I talk, 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 and I like to smile and laugh and have a great time. It doesn't take much to please me. I'm a very easy person to please. A walk to the mailbox or something in my subdivision with my husband kind of makes me happy, you know? So I'm an easy person to please. Um, but in this case, this has to be done. And so surrogacy is something that I have um, more than just considered. It is the path that I'm on right now. I have an agency that I've chosen, but I'm still open to working this thing out independently because it's very expensive.
I totally understand what you mean by I need this baby for me. And
Hmm.
that, again, what you have said is very real. And I've seen people break up because of fertility issues. And when you are the one with the diagnosis, that is your exact thought. Like, you can go on, you can have children with somebody else. But for me, this issue, I have to take it with me. I carry this is like my cross to bear, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
so I get that. And I don't think you're really all that as much alone as you think you are with that one. I really don't. I think that's a very real and authentic place to be in. And not to say that you wish divorce or anything like that upon yourself or your family, but that's really real. Like if
Yeah.
that man chose to get up tomorrow or your wife chose to get up tomorrow and said, I'm done with this. I can't do this anymore with you, and they can go on,
They can.
and then you're still stuck in this place until you come into full healing, right? So I think
Right.
that's very real.
Yeah.
No, and I'm glad you said it because somebody else may have needed to hear it as well, and know that they're not alone in that sense, in their thought process. A lot of times I think we think that our thoughts are too far out there in space,
Hmm.
but there's some space cadets out there with us. I'm one of them. So and I think that's a really authentic place to be in. COVID is diminishing to some extent. We're
Hmm.
not endemic. I think that's what they call it.
Yeah.
And so, with us going back into things, not necessarily the way they were, but going back to a normal sense, right?
Hmm.
And having to see and be around people who have children and are fertile and such like that. What's your mental health like at the moment in dealing with transitioning back into normal everyday life?
To be honest with you, I've never had a problem being around people who have children. Never
Okay.
had a problem. I've
Hmm.
never felt threatened. I've never felt left out because I've always felt hopeful. I've always been like, let me get pregnant. I'll get pregnant. I've always felt like that. Um, so I've never felt threatened by them. It doesn't make me sad. Actually, I enjoy the presence of children. I absolutely love children. I'm a former child care center owner. Before a flood happened in Louisiana, and how everything's get washed out. So, um, but I think also because I have a sense of focusing on me that it really just doesn't. I don't see it. I don't feel it, and I think seeing children and babies and women pregnant gives me motivation. It kind of motivates me, like that's gonna be you. That can be you, or now that can be the surrogate, but it could also be you too, right? So I just feel like I have more options now. Um, and I also tend to be more of a spiritual person. So, the spirit of children brings about the spirit of other children. You know, that fertile spirit tends to be around. Um, and it is comforting as well because children tend to gravitate towards me. The other day I was driving down the road, had my windows down because it was a pretty day. And I remember hearing, hey, lady. I looked over in the car on the right. It's a little boy in the back seat. He was a toddler. And he just was saying, hey, lady. And then when I looked, he waved. He was a little boy. And I said, hey, baby. He started to smile. So children they just tend to gravitate towards me. I've watched them watch me all the time, and smile at me. So their spirits are there, and I think that my spirit is there. I think they feel me. So that would probably be my preference anyway, is for things to normalize and to get around other people and to feel normal and not feel so isolated, like I'm over here drowning in this situation on my own.
Glad that you feel that way. I think that's very helpful for you too as well because for a lot of people they're like, well, COVID was the best time for me because I really didn't have to be in public or around, loved ones that are fertile and having babies and stuff and getting pregnant. And so for COVID it was like a dream come true, so to speak, because they didn't have to deal with going to events and such. But that's a very different perspective than I've had on the show before. And I just really like that you are still able to be around children and pregnant moms and just feel a connection to the joy of having children and or being pregnant. I think that's what I'm hearing is that you're just the presence of children and being around pregnant women.
Mhm.
Just you can feel that joy that they have, and so you can fully embrace it for them and be happy for them. And I think that's really difficult for most people. So that's a
Mhm.
blessing too as well. And if there's anything, what would you say to someone in the community to close out?
Ah, go after what you want. My dad passed about 7 years ago, and he and I had this great relationship, this beautiful father daughter relationship. But he had that relationship with all of my siblings. Um, and he wasn't the most educated man, but he always had a way of saying things and comforting me. And my middle name is Renee, but he always called me Nay for short. And anytime I had a problem, he would always say to me, all bets on you, Nay. If you don't bet on you, nobody else will. And so I've shared that before in my profession with some of my clients. I would tell them, all bets on you. So I would say to them in the community, find something that you can hold on to, and all bets on you. If you don't bet on you, nobody else will. And some journeys you have to walk alone. Some people will meet you at the finish line. Some people will cheer you on along the way, even if it is your spouse. My husband and I are on this journey together. I may be walking at a faster pace than him. He may meet me somewhere along the way, but I'm not stopping because he doesn't understand the process. I'm moving forward. And in that sense, he has no other choice but to move forward with me. But a simple saying from someone who only had a high school education that pushed for his children to get bachelor's, master's, and doctorates. All bets on you. That's that's everything you need right there. Bet on yourself.
Akitra, for that and for everything else you've stated and reminded us of, and how we can uh, continue in hope, continue with peace of mind, right? And then also feeling inspired for whatever the next phase and moving forward looks like for us. And yeah, that was great. And I appreciate you for being on the show today. And if you like to give your social handles at this moment for those to follow along your story or connect with you, you can. I'll give you
Yeah.
the floor back.
Okay, thank you. Also, I have a fundraiser going. Would it be okay if I mention that? Okay, perfect. So, if you want to follow me on Instagram, you can. You can follow me at I am underscore Akitra J, and that's AKITRA J. You can follow my fertility journey, my surrogacy journey at on Instagram at Sarah's Promise underscore 04. And I have partnered with a really great nonprofit organization. There's fundraisers posted to their website for me in particular. That's Hands of Comfort, inc.org. And if you want to, if your heart is telling you to give in support of me becoming a mom, you can find me on GoFundMe at A Journey to Motherhood, Sarah's Promise 4. And you could give at any amount, anytime. But again, you can, also go to the website of the nonprofit org and check out some of the fundraisers that they have planned coming up for me. But the GoFundMe is A Journey to Motherhood, Sarah's Promise 4. And my Instagram is I am underscore Akitra J.
I was making notes as she was talking, and I'm going to make sure I have all of that information in the show details for you guys, so that you can tap and go and connect with Akitra, follow her journey, support if you have the extra income to do so or feel led to do so. We appreciate you guys for tuning in to another episode of Infertility and Me Podcast. Peace and blessings.